So Tyler, thank you so much for participating today in our Community of Practice channel on YouTube. We really appreciate all the work you do, and we just want to thank you for your leadership today.
My pleasure.
Awesome. So as always, we begin by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So if you can please do us the honors, Tyler, by just introducing yourselves to our listeners and viewers and tell us about your remarkable work.
100%. Well, my name is Tyler Hamilton. I'm a Senior Director of Climate at Mars Discovery District in Toronto. We're a nonprofit. We started coming up on 25 years ago. Our mission is to help commercialize Canadian innovation in Canada, right? Because Canada's got a bad track record of putting lots of effort on R&D, and when commercial products launch into the market, they get scooped up and brought to other markets. So we're trying to build economic development for Canada, but with a focus on innovative startups. Our history started in the health area, so MARS as an acronym stands for Medical and Related Sciences, but really one of our biggest practices right now is around climate and clean technologies. And I lead the climate practice at Mars. And that practice takes on a number of forms. One is we work with the ventures that are across Canada, and part of our programming is about 240 of them, give or take. It changes all the time. And these are ventures that fall under the umbrella of clean tech, broadly speaking. So it could be energy efficiency companies, it could be transportation related companies, it could be water technology companies, adaptation and resilience, like anything that falls under um, uh, innovations and technologies that have a positive impact on the environment and the climate, but that do so in a way that's economically positive, that's cost effective, that's competitive in the marketplace. On the flip side, we also develop a pretty um, world-leading corporate partner network where, there's the ventures, they're the suppliers of the innovation that are trying to change the world. And on the flip side, you need adopters. You need those who are going to actually scale it up, deploy it in the marketplace, because otherwise you're not going to have any impact, right? Like innovation without adoption is a dead end. So we're trying to break that cycle, and we try to matchmake our corporate partner network, which are some of the largest Canadian and international companies, and bring them together with the entrepreneurs in Canada to try to solve their problems. And then part of that mix, we do a lot of coalition building. So we bring in government stakeholders, regulatory stakeholders. We bring in the capital community. We have a pretty extensive capital network that's composed of, everyone from in government providing grants and non-dilutive funding solutions to the venture capital community, to angel networks, to growth equity companies, impact investors, and then all the way down to, pension funds. Those ones have been a tougher nut to crack, when you start getting into larger sources of funding, and those are areas and challenges we're trying to overcome. One of the other things that we do, we have a program called Mission from Mars, right? And focusing in on that, breaking barriers to the adoption of innovation. That's what it's focused on. So we define missions as 5-year initiatives that are tackling something that's a big challenge that's kind of holding back the growth of certain types of innovation, or which are huge opportunities that are not that we're not seizing quickly enough and in a way that's competitive with other jurisdictions. So an example is one of our first missions was around public procurement. The whole thinking around that is our government is not doing a good enough job of using public money to adopt the solutions that we're coming up with and inventing in Canada, right? So we throw tons, billions and billions of dollars at researchers, in the university environment, entrepreneurs to get our solutions to a stage where they're commercial. But then we just kind of abandon them So we're really trying to get government to step up and say, look, you have the luxury of being a little bit more risk tolerant, than the private sector, and to start looking at the solutions you're funding to create and start adopting them within the public sector environment. So we've been spending a lot of time around that and building coalitions with municipalities, provinces, key departments, and the federal government to really tackle that issue. Another one we launched is around carbon management, right? Like solutions that are able to remove carbon from our atmosphere. We have lots of great innovators coming out that are doing that. There's various ways of doing that, including nature-based solutions. And again, we try to build that coalition, that ecosystem that becomes supportive of those goals, including potential adopters of the carbon removal solutions that are being produced. Our most recent mission is focused on decarbonizing buildings, as well as building resilience into those buildings. And we've gathered lots of developers, community housing organizations, developers on the commercial side, developers on the residential side, including property managers, and we're trying to work with them to match make with Canadian solution providers, all again with the same focus on increasing the adoption of these innovations. And I'll say a newer thing that we're working on is trying to build up our adaptation and resilience practice because we think with all the work we do around carbon mitigation, we always need to be thinking about adaptation and resilience at the same time, right? Like, and actually a whole whack of other issues too, including affordability, including accessibility. There's no reason we need to tackle these issues in kind of a silo. We should be looking at solutions that tackle a number of them at the same time. So that's a lot, but it's kind of an overview of some of our key programs.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. It's very important for everyone to be aware of all that you do and how you are actually making change. So that's awesome. So I would say because you actually answered a lot of questions here. So you did touch on you touched. Okay, let me ask you this. What inspires you? What inspires you about the work you do?
Well, some people might know that previously, before I joined Mars, I've been at Mars for 8 years now. I was a journalist, so I was editor of Corporate Knights magazine for 4 years, and then before that, I was a reporter at the Toronto Star for about 13 years, writing a column. And while I was at the Toronto Star, that's when I first started to seize on this whole like climate issue, right? Around 2005 and thinking like at the time I was a business reporter and I thought like let's twist the narrative a bit instead of dwelling on the problem, which we have plenty of doom and gloom type folks reporting on. Let's focus on some of the solutions, right? And I gravitated towards the innovation side of things. So I started to write more about the entrepreneurs that are kind of devoting their lives to solving some of these problems. And they're super interesting stories and they're very inspiring. So I started to write a column around them. And it was very interesting because not only was I getting outreach from other technology folks, I was getting outreach from just average Canadians who maybe you're a truck driver or you're an accountant or you're an executive assistant, and they're just asking me like, how do I take what I do in a conventional sector and apply it to be part of this whole like movement towards clean energy, sustainable technologies, and it really signaled to me that people are looking for hopeful stories and they're looking for solutions. So what I liked about when I transitioned from doing journalism to Mars is that I was really doing the same thing, but in a different way. I wasn't really writing about issues, but I was working with the entrepreneurs to help enable them so that they can provide more and more of those hopeful solutions and get people inspired. And increasingly, we're also trying to bring in work, you know, around around trying to make it less of a white male type thing. Like we've got our Women in Clean Tech Challenge where we try to recruit for that and have like at least a minimum of those in our cohort from BIPOC backgrounds. And that is now 5 years in the running, and we've now like, it's just starting to snowball. Like we've got this great um, graduate class of about 30 women who are doing amazing things. And And to see that program snowball and to see it inspire more women to become entrepreneurs, maybe they didn't feel they had that support network before. It's just amazing to see. And I got an amazing team as well. So that inspires me every day as well. Just working with younger people, I'm a little gray in the beard, so I'm one of the older people at Mars. But the young people that are coming in and they're willing to work so hard to make change, it's just so inspiring.
Absolutely. That's what I always say too. Like we're actually doing it for the younger generation, the next generation, and then the one after that. We're just planting seeds, and I love how you turn like a negative into a positive and inspiring people to see how they in their industry, how they can, make it better and more cleaner for the environment and for the future. So that's excellent. I love it.
Yeah, well, and I'll
So,
just add, like,
mhm.
a lot of people get down about how like this is a problem that's too big for us to solve. But like in 2011, I wrote a book called Mad Like Tesla. It's an odd name, but the whole idea there was about how we need people who are thinking outside the box, who in a previous generation might have been written off as, oh, well, you're crazy, right? Like, and Tesla was kind of back in the 1800s, he was kind of considered that you're a mad scientist. But we need put people like that pushing the boundaries. And in the last chapter of that book, I have this paragraph where I talk about how, like, you got to think about it. There's many thousands and thousands of people each doing their own thing, working towards solving these issues. And sometimes when you're just kind of working as an individual or seeing things in isolation, you can get discouraged. But if you realize that on a global scale, there's potentially millions of people like you working together to solve these problems. And the other thing is that when we think about where we are, like we know we have a lot of work to do and that we're not moving fast enough. But I also always like to point out to people, hey, if it was business as usual, from 10 years ago to now, how much worse off would we be, right? So climate impact, the state of the world, it's a sliding scale, right? So I always say things could be worse. So we have to remember that. And when you think, oh, nothing's happening, we're not making any progress, we're making progress. We just need to make a lot more progress.
That's right, because it's not everything we see in front of our eyes. Sometimes it's underground, and you don't really see it till later on. But all that work that went into the underground was a lot, So that's
Exactly.
awesome.
Yeah.
So okay, so let me ask you this: how do you feel about the future of social impact in Canada right now?
I'm very positive about it. In fact, I've noticed over the last few years, there's been a an overlap of what, traditional venture capital and then kind of impact investing that we're seeing emerge. And it's having an influence on how we engage the entrepreneurs we work with, because it's not just about you're trying to focus on that single, like this can be profitable and this is going to have like a single financial return on investment. We're educating them to say there's lots of things now that the investment community is looking for. You need to demonstrate impact. You have to start measuring this. You have to start focusing on diversity of your team and your management team. These are all factors that you have to think of in the early days and build into your DNA. So it's been hugely influential. And also, like we work a lot with foundations and family offices, and we're starting to see the increasing importance of blending finance, like creative blended finance mechanisms, to take on a little bit more risk to help catalyze the businesses and the technologies and the change that we're looking for. So it's been very positive to see this industry emerging in Canada. Relative to other markets, like in the US, I don't have a good sense of that. I do feel that the pool of capital in this space is pretty limited compared to the US, and we're always battling against that. But what I like is that we're having the conversation, groups are getting together, we're trying to get creative, and I just see it continuing to amplify.
Awesome, awesome. Wow, this is so impactful because honestly, you went right down the questions perfect. Like you answered almost everything. So everything that you said was so impactful, and I'm sure it's definitely going to leave impressions in people's minds when they watch this. So what I would say is, do you have like, what is your call to action and any closing thoughts? Because this has just been perfect. And anything you want to add as far as like any priorities you're working on right now. Maybe you can tie those two in. That'd be great.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Just last week, we had our Women in Cleantech finale, and I was moderating a panel there. And one of the, like the topic of the panel was the importance of individual action as part of collective action. And what we were trying to emphasize is that everybody can influence change, not in the way like you always think, oh, I'm not an investor, I can't invest in this, I can't help this grow, or I'm not an entrepreneur, but simply by talking to other people, right? Inspiring your children, inspire like talking to your coworkers or family members about cool things that are happening and trends and educating them on this stuff. That all helps create this kind of collective mind shift towards where we need to be. So everybody is an advocate. Everybody has the potential to be an advocate. You don't have to be the person in the lab inventing some disruptive breakthrough thing. You can just be one of those, drops in the water that are creating huge waves.
Absolutely. That's a motto I take as well. And, and also if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, this has been so remarkable, Tyler. Like, it's very inspiring to know what you are doing, what Mars is doing, because I've heard of that name so many times. And just to interview someone from that scape is just amazing. So, on behalf of Setsi, I want to thank you so much for taking the time today. And we definitely will connect and be in touch. And, again, thanks for all the work you do.
I look forward to it. Thanks for the opportunity.
By acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on, we also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty.
All right. Well, have a good week.
You too, dear. Thanks for everything.
No problem. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care. Bye.